The Prime Minister will announce tomorrow that the HS2 line between Birmingham and Manchester will be scrapped. He's also set to lay out plans for billions of pounds of funding to improve east-west rail and local services across the north of England. Here in Manchester, the Labour Mayor of Manchester, Andy Burnham, says he tried to reach a compromise with Levelling Up Secretary Michael Gove in a last-ditch meeting this afternoon. Mr Burnham will join us live. Also tonight, the Home Secretary made her pitch to the right wing of the party, with warnings of a hurricane of migration.
The wind of change that carried my own parents across the globe in the 20th century was a mere gust compared to the hurricane that is coming.
How did her language go down with colleagues? Do you call it a hurricane?
I would say it's a big problem there. That my language is different to her language.
What do you think
just
of
like
her
every
language?
politician is an individual. But
What do you think of her language?
I think that she's trying to emphasise how important it is that we tackle something that the British public are deeply concerned about.
And while the PM is laying out his stall tomorrow, those who might seek to replace him one day, should the opportunity arise, have had their chance. Joe's on the case.
Who catches your eye in terms of future leaders?
Penny Mordaunt.
I agree, Penny Mordaunt and Tom Tugendhat.
And what do you like about them?
I think we need another strong woman, and I think Penny Mordaunt is excellent.
Yeah.
And our panel of politicos will chew over the ups and downs of this conference. Good evening from Manchester. Rishi Sunak will announce tomorrow in his first Tory conference speech as Prime Minister that he is scrapping the high-speed train line from Birmingham to Manchester. Nick is here. What do you know?
Well, Victoria, in the last few days, we've really been dancing around this one. But this afternoon, I found myself in the company of somebody who absolutely knows what's going on. And that is allowing us on Newsnight to report, as you are saying, that in his conference speech tomorrow, the Prime Minister will announce that he is scrapping phase 2 of HS2. That, of course, is the Birmingham to Manchester line. Now, as I understand it, the Prime Minister will take money earmarked for that line. We're talking potentially around £36 billion, and he will redirect that to 3 really big things: improving local bus services, improving roads, and a big nod towards the east-west line in the north of England, the line that would be going from Leeds to Liverpool. Now, there have been a flurry of meetings this afternoon. The Prime Minister did meet Andy Street, that's the Conservative Mayor of the West Midlands, who was very, very keen on this line. He is said to be deeply unhappy. And Michael Gove, the Levelling Up Secretary, he met Andy Burnham, who is, of course, the Labour Mayor of Greater Manchester. Now, I don't want to steal Andy Burnham's thunder, but as you say, he did outline his compromise plan, which is you preserve the HS2 second leg, but you build from north to south and you press ahead with that east-west line, Leeds to Liverpool.
So what is the context to all this?
Well, I'm told that we will have a raft of substantive policy announcements in a series of areas tomorrow. One source said to me, I have never seen a Prime Minister make this many announcements on this scale at any party political conference. Now, Rishi Sunak believes he has alighted upon the 2 defining themes that will take him up to the general election. In the first place, that is an assault on all political leaders of all parties dating back over the last 30 years, and he says they have presided over a political system which incentivises the easy decisions, not the right one, and he will end that status quo. Who was a leader just over 30 years ago? Of course, that was Margaret Thatcher, so he is not including her. And then the second theme is the Prime Minister will say he is prepared to take difficult decisions, and difficult decisions that will upset people, because his mission is, as he says, to fundamentally change our country, and HS2 absolutely fits into that pattern. He says costs have been allowed to run out of control, and the money would be far better off spent helping people in their everyday lives, buses and cars.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nick. We are going to talk to Andy Burnham live. We're just sorting out the technicals. But first, despite the backwards and forwards about HS2, Rishi Sunak has been out on the airwaves today telling anyone who will listen that this Conservative Party conference, likely the last before the next general election, has been a roaring success. Certainly those gathered here have witnessed pockets of contentment and optimism about the prospects for the party and signs some of the Prime Minister's recent messaging on issues like net zero and car ownership are landing with the membership. But despite the PM's protestations to the contrary, it's also been a conference characterised by discord, uncertainty and by moments many have interpreted as the first skirmishes in the leadership election expected to follow if there is a Conservative defeat at the ballot box. None more so, perhaps, than the emphatic speech this afternoon from Home Secretary Suella Braverman, in which she warned of a hurricane of migration and questioned the Human Rights Act. Tomorrow, all eyes will be on Mr Sunak himself as he addresses the party, with many believing his would-be successors are already on manoeuvres. The PM finds himself under pressure to articulate his vision for Britain and to explain how he intends to unite his fractious party behind him. Nick's been out and about.
A politician who knows how to make a mark. A politician granted a pretty free rein by Downing Street. Suella Braverman, a Home Secretary determined to confront her Labour critics.
I know they've tried to make me into a hate figure because I tell the truth. The blunt, unvarnished truth about what is happening in our country.
And then language rarely heard from other cabinet ministers.
The wind of change that carried my own parents across the globe in the 20th century was a mere gust compared to the hurricane that is coming. Highly controversial ideas are presented to the workforce and to the public as if they're motherhood and apple pie, gender ideology, white privilege, anti-British history. And the evidence demonstrates that if you don't challenge this poison, things just get worse.
One of those comments prompted a heckle, saying there's no such thing as gender ideology.
Homophobic rant. She should be ashamed of herself. She's not really a Tory.
Andrew Boff, the Conservative chair of the London Assembly, who's a veteran campaigner for equalities, was removed. That prompted criticism from a former cabinet minister.
I've been coming to conference for 35 years or more, and a bit of heckling, a little bit of dispute is part of the warp and woof of a party conference, and I'm disappointed that the security team took this to an extreme. I think it's a heavy-handed approach to a senior Conservative who's entitled to his opinion.
Suella Braverman wasn't responsible for the actions of the security guards and the police officers who escorted Andrew Boff out of the conference hall. And later the Home Secretary said he should be let back in. But she was responsible for the speech and Downing Street was responsible for clearing it. So what is going on? Well, Suella Braverman is one of those few cabinet ministers who's given a licence to speak her mind. That helps Downing Street because it means the Conservatives reach voters that Downing Street want to reach. But one senior Tory told me, you will never hear the Prime Minister use that sort of language. An ally of the Home Secretary hailed the speech.
I thought it was a tour de force, because what it did is it was set out the context of why it's so important that we win the next election. There is a huge battle going on for the soul of Britain. On one side you have the liberal elites with all their predilections and preoccupations, and then you have the voice of the people. And Suella Braverman has emerged as the champion of the people.
But Sir Robert Buckland was unimpressed.
Well, look, I haven't heard the full speech, and I don't like to pass judgment without knowing the full content. But I'll say this: I think it's incumbent on all of us to use language that is responsible, measured, and is up to the level of events. That's what I expect from senior politicians, and that's what I want to see this week.
And talking about a potential hurricane of migrants, does that meet your test on language?
No.
Tomorrow, it's the Prime Minister's Day. And what precisely is the Sunak vision?
I'm not going to spill steal his thunder from his big speech tomorrow. But you will be impressed. I have no doubt.
Tomorrow will be a turning point, in our destiny, because lots of people had written us off just a few months back. We were 20 odd points behind the polls. That's closed.
And there's a lot of criticism what he said on net zero, but will you say
there's no criticism? What a load of nonsense that is. Criticism from you, from who? The media, from the Liberal elite, from the Green lobby. I tell you, come to Ashfield, knock on some doors. There's no criticism there at all.
All right, can I take a quick photo of you and me?
a star turn in demand? The Prime Minister's wife giving her blessing to the conference.
Right, let's talk live now to the Labour Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham. So it is happening. The HS2 line from Birmingham to Manchester is being scrapped. What's your reaction?
Well, anyone who lives here in the north of England knows that the thing we most need is a new line across the north. As a result of this decision, if this is how it is to be announced tomorrow, anyone of my age and older will never see that new line in their lifetimes. You cannot create that new line if you pull the heart out of HS2, which is the infrastructure in Greater Manchester. And that's why this is devastating for our city region and for the north of England as a whole, because we desperately need modern rail infrastructure across the north, because people here have to put up with daily chaos on the railways, and that, sadly, is now set to continue.
Not necessarily. We are told that Rishi Sunak will say 36 billion, 37 billion pounds, which will be saved from not doing that high-speed line, will be reinvested in regional transport links across the North and Midlands.
Well, I'll look at the detail, but honestly, Victoria, I don't believe that will deliver what the North needs. As I said, the North needs a new line. They're going to try and spin it, I think, that they're building a new line, but I can't see how they can do that, as well as all of the other things that they're promising. And sometimes in politics, it's not just what you do, but it's the way that you do it. So announcing this decision in Manchester, I think, just shows contempt for the place. The Prime Minister's found time for lots of things today, but not to speak to the leader of Manchester City Council, not to speak to me. It's no way to treat the city of Manchester when you're there hosting your conference. We are completely shut out of this decision. We're having to go off media reports of what's being announced. Is that any way to treat the good people of Greater Manchester and the wider North? I don't think it is.
You had this last-ditch meeting with Michael Gove this afternoon. What did you say to him? What did he say to you?
Well, I was grateful for that opportunity, at least. And I said there is potentially some common ground here. If you build the core of HS2 in Greater Manchester, that is the infrastructure that builds that Liverpool to Leeds line across the north. Now, I suppose tonight I've got to hold out the hope that that message was heard and that's what will be announced. But I don't see how they can do that with all of the other things that they're promising. That's why I'm sceptical tonight as to what's being announced. Why wouldn't they meet us? Why wouldn't they have a conversation? For 15 years, we've taken a cross-party approach to this. This is long-term infrastructure that outlives any government. For them to be holed up in hotel rooms in Manchester, kind of deciding the future of the North today, without even consulting us, just doesn't feel at all the right way to do things. In effect, what they are deciding is that the north of England will have a smaller economy for the rest of this century as a result of this decision. What they're saying is it's okay for people to get HS2 from London to Birmingham, and then you go on to the existing rail infrastructure, which is already over capacity. What message will that send to people in our part of the world? Basically, the one that they've got used to all of their lives, that they are second-class citizens when it comes to transport in the eyes of the Whitehall and Westminster system and this Conservative government.
And Michael Gove is the Levelling Up Secretary. Did you get the impression that he agrees with the scrapping of it? What did he say to you?
Well, I'm not going to go into details. He did me the courtesy of hearing an alternative solution and said he would relay that back, and I was grateful for that much. But I asked the Prime Minister a week ago whether he would do us the courtesy of a meeting, and the fact that he couldn't find time for that while he was in our city, then I don't personally find that acceptable, given the enormity of this decision for our part of the world. It has echoes of that Tier 3 debate. They just think they can treat us differently. They just think we don't deserve the same hearing. They've spent billions of pounds on this railway line in the southern half of the country, tunnelling it under fields to please Tory MPs. But they can't bring it further north, and they can't even give a meeting to northern leaders to hear how we feel about it. I think this decision will leave the north of England with Victorian rail infrastructure while the southern half of the country has new lines, and that is only going to widen the north-south divide, the exact opposite of what they said at the last election. This line, HS2, and the Northern Powerhouse rail line has been in not one, not two, but 3 Conservative manifestos. What does it say to the north of England, people here, that they just feel they can rip all of that up in our faces and take us for mugs? That's what they think they can do, but they've got another thing coming.
Why? What are you going to do?
We'll look at all options, of course we will. And obviously we'll be talking
like what?
To the Labour Party as well. We just cannot accept that the plug can be pulled on us in this way, and that we will always have this second-class infrastructure for the rest of this century. We've got to look at all options.
Okay.
There is so much money has already gone in to the development of these plans. Businesses are invested in these plans. Pulling the plug on us and doing it in Manchester, as I say, Victoria, sometimes it's not what you do, it's the way that you do it. And I think people will always remember a government holed up in hotel rooms in Manchester, plotting this decision without talking to local leaders. In my view, some of the things they've announced this week, you know, the going cold on net zero, the plan for drivers, these aren't long-term decisions. Don't make me laugh. This is a long-term decision, is it, on HS2? I don't think so. To me, what we've heard this week in Manchester are the kind of desperate last acts of a dying government.
OK, well, yes or no, because we're really out of time, Mr Burnham. Have you had indications from Labour that they're going to step up and say, yes, we would fund HS2 from Birmingham to Manchester, yes or no?
We're in conversations with our own party. We're waiting to hear the detail tomorrow. I don't know. They may surprise me. Maybe they're going to build that infrastructure that enables the East-West line, but I severely doubt it on what I know tonight. And I'm really hopeful that the Labour Party now will step in and give the north of England what we've been repeatedly promised.
Thank you very much for talking to Newsnight and our viewers tonight. Andy Burnham, Labour Mayor of Greater Manchester. Well, on behalf of the government, I've been talking to the Secretary of State for Science, Innovation and Technology, Michelle Donnellan. We recorded this interview at 8 p.m. There was a fairly noisy reception going on beneath us. And by then, of course, Nick had been told that there would be no high-speed line between Birmingham and Manchester.
Nothing has been announced, and the Prime Minister was very clear today that he has taken this time to review the evidence and then make a considered decision, which is what I would want from a Prime Minister, and I think what most people would want. And I'll leave the Prime Minister to do any announcing on this agenda or any other agenda akin.
But have you got no idea then, as a Cabinet Minister, what's about to happen?
What I'm telling you on national television is that the Prime Minister has been very clear that this is a decision he is taking and he is announcing, and I'm not going to be drawn on speculation. We've heard speculation all week and a lot of commentary on this very topic.
I mean, it's not speculation anymore. Our political editor is reporting that there will be no high-speed line from Birmingham to Manchester,
So
which suggests that you are betraying the North and announcing that betrayal in the North. I mean, that's one hell of a political strategy.
I just want to correct you there, because it is speculation until the Prime Minister has announced anything, and the Prime Minister has not announced anything.
You're about to betray the North and announce that betrayal in the North.
But we don't know what the Prime Minister is going to announce. We will see tomorrow, and I look forward to that speech, and you can tune in too, and I'm sure it will be a real table thumper.
Your government was elected in 2019 on the promise of levelling up, on the promise of this high-speed line. I mean, this is a massive breach of trust with voters, isn't it?
Look, this is a government that is committed to levelling up, and we do that in every single department. Just today, in the conference hall, I announced £60 million in research and development money to go across our country. And I know that, of course, we announced our £1 billion package for 55 towns. announcement after announcement is targeted at getting funding into some of the areas that have been left behind.
What have tech businesses been saying to you about the uncertainty, about the unstable, inconsistent business environment that your government is creating?
Well, that's just utter nonsense, because we haven't been creating an unstable environment. What tech businesses have been saying to me...
You absolutely have.
Let me answer the question. So what tech businesses have been saying to me is that they are really excited by the fact that this is a government that is prioritising tech. For the first time ever, we have a department dedicated to science, innovation and technology. We've got a plan to get us to be a superpower. We're already incredibly successful when it comes to tech. We're in the top three countries in the world.
You might be prioritising tech, but at the same time, because the Chancellor said the costs were totally out of control of HS2, you've created this massive unstable environment for businesses. Why should they trust you?
Look, the media has been speculating during the week on what's going to happen.
No, I'm afraid that's
Prime Minister is going
not
to
true.
make an announcement tomorrow.
No, the Chancellor
and you're
started
conflating my remit on tech. And actually, if you speak to any of those tech businesses, they will tell you that this is a government that is backing tech.
What did you make of Suella Braverman's pitch for the leadership today?
Well, she wasn't pitching for the leadership. She was doing her job and doing a speech on her remit as Home Secretary, including immigration. There's no vacancy when it comes to the role of Prime Minister.
And on immigration, she said a hurricane is coming here. Is she right?
She's right that there is a big problem when it comes to illegal immigration.
Well,
and we've made no secret of
Would you call it a hurricane?
I would say it's a big problem. Now, my language is different to her language.
What do you think
just
of
like
her
every
language?
politician is an individual. But
what do you think of her language?
I think that she's trying to emphasise how important it is that we tackle something that the British public are deeply concerned about. And that is why we're leaving no stone unturned when it comes to tackling illegal immigration, because it's fundamentally unfair. I would argue that fairness is in the DNA of the British public. It's one of our key values. Now, it's not fair to let people cheat the system, especially when they are predominantly economic migrants that are coming from a safe country.
And why have you not sorted this out in 13 years?
Well, we have been sorting it out. We've tackled it with.
Then?
But look, this is not just a problem which we are facing. The issue across Europe is up by 30-odd%. There are different countries in the world that are facing this challenge. That's why the Home Secretary went to America last week and raised it on the global stage.
In your speech today, you said something that really struck me. You said, we are the party of facts. I wonder if I could ask you to just have a little look at this, please.
A government diktat to sort your rubbish into 7 different bins.
What is sinister and what we shouldn't tolerate is the idea that local councils can decide how often you go to the shops.
It's no wonder that Labour seems so relaxed about taxing meat.
How can you be the party of facts when none of that is true?
We are the party that stands up for facts, and my announcement today...
I'm going to pause you right there. None of those 3 things are true.
Well, it certainly is true. There are a lot of people that have been calling for a meat taxation. And it's this government that have been stemming
I'm not going to let this go. There was never a proposal to use 7 bins. We can't find any council that wants to decide how often people can go to shops. And Labour have never proposed taxing meat. They are untruths, they are fiction, they are completely and utterly made up. And it's really disrespectful to voters.
I genuinely believe we are the party of facts and evidence.
I've just given you 3 pieces of fiction that members of your party have said in the last couple of weeks.
Well, I've heard members of the Labour Party advocating for those things. And
it was never a Labour policy, come on.
That wasn't the words that were used there. And I have heard members of the Labour Party advocating for those things and advocating for their party to campaign on those areas.
Is this how desperate the Conservative Party is now? You're making up stuff.
But have you been at this conference? If you have, then you would say that this is not a party that is in desperation mode. This is a party that's in delivery mode. This is a government that is acting on the priorities of the British public, whether that is tackling illegal immigration, whether that is levelling up, whether that is increasing the national living wage. These are the things that are coming up on the doorstep.
I want to ask you about something that happened at an event yesterday, and it's to do with Susan Hall, your mayoral candidate, Tory mayoral candidate for London. She said that Sadiq Khan's divisive attitude leaves Jewish people frightened. Have a look at what your business minister, Nuzgani, told us.
So I want to be absolutely accurate in my language in responding in case I'm misquoted anywhere. And so the language of fear and demeaning our political opponents is not a conservative value that I recognise, and I assume that Steve, you'd agree as well. And we just shouldn't stoop to it. And furthermore, to get the border deputies to issue a statement to slap that comment down shows that his comments do not work, especially when they attract such condemnation from the people that you are purporting to support. And fundamentally, have we not learnt anything from Zach Goldsmith's similar attempt in his mayoral campaign that ended in abject failure?
Who is right, Susan Hall, the Tory mayoral candidate for London, or your business minister, Nuzgani?
Look, I wasn't at either of these events. You're asking me to comment on snapshots of information.
Well, I've given you the words of Susan Hall. I've just played you the words of Nuzgani. It's pretty straightforward, isn't it? Who is right, Susan Hall or Nuzgani?
Look, you're asking me to comment on snapshots of information. What I believe is that we should live in a tolerant and respectful country, that we should stand up for things that are divisive and promote hatred. And that's the duty of us as members of Parliament and of citizens. I will find out some more information on exactly what has happened, and I'm sure I'll come back and give you a more thorough answer.
You also said today in your speech, we are the party of free speech. Yet today, the leader of the Conservative Party at the London Assembly, Andrew Boff, was ejected from Suella Braverman's speech after heckling her on her comments on gender. That's not a great look for a party that claims to be the party of free speech.
I reject that, surely.
Why was he ejected then?
No, I reject that comment because surely people have the right to be able to hear what Suella is saying, the Home Secretary. So if somebody is trying to heckle them and disrupt it to the point that her view cannot be heard and her representation of our government cannot be heard, that it would not allow for free speech, would it?
What about his free speech?
If he is trying to silence a view, that is the epitome of anti-free speech.
I mean, were you in the auditorium for Suella Braverman's speech?
I was not. I was out at fringe events.
I was. It wasn't loud. It wasn't a big deal. It wasn't a big thing. But he was bundled out.
Well, look, as I said, we are the party of free speech, and that includes listening to giving cabinet ministers the opportunity to air views. Now, if people want to silence them and disagree with certain topics, then that is the epitome of anti-free speech.
I don't think he was trying to silence her. I think he was just heckling. Bloomberg reported this week, allies of Science Secretary Michelle Donnellan suggested she is one to watch in Manchester this week and may make her intentions clear. Are you one to watch as a future leader?
No, there is no leadership vacancy at all. What I am is somebody that works extremely hard and tries to deliver, and that's what I've done over the last 8 months. That's what I'm going to continue to do.
One day in the future, would you want to be leader of the Conservative Party?
I just want to get on with the job in hand.
Have you ever thought about it?
I haven't, to be honest. I've recently had a baby as well. I'm busy enough. I'm trying to have a baby and be a cabinet minister. I've got quite a lot on my plate.
But you've never ever thought about leadership ambitions. You're expecting us to believe that?
No, I haven't. And I have, as I said, I've got a 5-month-old baby. I'm in the cabinet. I'm trying to deliver for my constituency. I really do think I have enough on my plate.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Michelle Donnellan may say she's never thought about the leadership of her party, but others here are, both members and perhaps some cabinet ministers, and some faces that have shaped the party's past. Here's Joe.
Is this party changing? Last night, an unexpected crooner made a karaoke cameo.
How does it feel to be back at this conference after, what, 33 years?
Yes, over 30 years. Been amazing.
Nigel Farage quit the Conservatives in 1990 over the exchange rate mechanism.
Optimism, but they want leadership.
He's been a headache for party leaders ever since.
I've just, in my own little modest way, turned up, you know.
But today Rishi Sunak didn't rule out him becoming a member again.
You're right.
And some of the party faithful seem keen to forgive.
But you'd want this man as party leader? I would love it. I would love it. This is the type of person we need.
Yeah.
Not saying anything wrong about Rishi, but this is the man.
Although he's playing hard to get.
Look, let's see what happens. They're going to lose the next election. There'll then be the most enormous battle for ideas. If it became a real Conservative party, I might think about it.
Of the members we met, optimism about the next election was limited.
Wearing what I'm wearing, I'm supposed to believe that all things are possible. So that's probably as much as I can say on that.
The PM isn't at immediate risk of a P45, but the chatter about who's next has begun. Who catches your eye in terms of future leaders?
Penny Mordaunt.
I agree, Penny Mordaunt and Tom Tugendhat.
And what do you like about them?
I think we need another strong woman, and I think Penny Mordaunt is excellent.
Yeah. Kemi Badenoch.
You like her?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, I think people felt there was need for a younger face, a more diverse face for the party.
And the warm response to today's speech from woke-busting immigration hardliner Suella Braverman suggests the Tories could be heading to the right.
I mean, she's so passionate and so to the point that it was brilliant.
She could definitely be a future leader. I was completely impressed, feel completely inspired.
Bookmakers suggest the top 5 most likely successors to Rishi Sunak are today's headliner, Suella Braverman, Leader of the House, Penny Mordaunt, who played a starring role with a sword in the King's coronation, Kemi Badenoch, who's had an extraordinary rise after first being elected just 6 years ago, Foreign Secretary James Cleverly, a rare survivor through the May, Johnson, Truss and now Sunak administrations, and Gillian Keegan, the Education Secretary, who says she's done a good job. Is it savage or sensible that even though Rishi Sunak could have another year in the job at least, some in his party already seem to be measuring his political pulse? The question over who's next is a very live conversation topic here, even though opinions differ on the alchemy of leadership success. What should Conservative Party members keep in mind when they're thinking about a future leader of their party?
Traditionally, the Conservative Party has been hungry for power and been willing to do what it takes to get power. Now, when that comes to Conservative Party members thinking about who they might select, they've got to remember that by virtue of being a member of a political party, they're a bit of an oddball. Most people aren't members of the party, and it makes them a little bit more to the political extreme, in the Conservative Party's case, to the right, than the average member of the public. So rather than thinking who appeals to just me, they've actually got to be thinking who appeals to other people that aren't like me, the sort of people that you need to build a big election-winning coalition.
If Rishi Sunak needs reminding how unforgiving both those electorates can be, he needn't look far.
Yes, yes.
Both leaders ascended without a vote of the membership. How are you feeling about the future of your party, Mrs May? And both faced questions about their mandates. But a party at war with itself cannot count on victory. With so much discord and so little harmony, can the Prime Minister bring faith where there is doubt, even in his own ranks?
Let's talk now to Seb Payne, who is the director of the centre-right think tank Onward, Stephen Bush, who is associate editor and columnist at the Financial Times, and Megan Gallagher, who is the deputy leader of the Scottish Conservatives. Welcome, all of you. OK, so HS2 is not happening, Birmingham to Manchester. Is this one of those tough decisions, Stephen, that Rishi Sunak said he was having to take?
Well, I'm not convinced it's a tough decision to do something that is broadly popular with Conservative voters, that most people, unfortunately, seeing as I think it is quite important to our growth and productivity, most people don't care all that much about. I suppose one argument is that it's tough because they've allowed it to bleed out throughout the whole conference. But look, tough decisions are things like reforming planning, deregulating certain markets, targeting the various tax thresholds, the 60p rate for people earning over a certain amount, that very high threshold brought in by the child benefit change. I'm just not convinced this counts as a tough decision. And in many ways, the problem with this conference is that long-term decisions for a brighter future feels like a way of badging together some of the Prime Minister's personal hobby horses, whether you agree with them or not. But they aren't, I would say, for the most part, things that the country is going to be all that much better off for having happened.
What do you think, Megan?
So it is one of those budget decisions that I think we had to look at in terms of, where we are financially in the country. But I think we're losing track here a little bit because it is a world-leading project, and, the finish completed version, whatever that may be. I'm not going to speculate just now because we don't know what's going to be in the
finished
Prime
version
Minister's.
is not going to be what was promised. That's the bottom line.
That possibly could be the case, but I think that doesn't take away from the fact that it is a world-leading project, and it will have some of the fastest trains in Europe once it's completed. And it's
from West London to Birmingham. I mean, what's the point of that?
Well, it is a world-leading project, and if I could put the Scottish context on
Please
this
do.
as well, just in terms of the Scottish National Party. I mean, they can't even get ferries to float.
Oh, I thought you were going to talk about Scottish Conservatives' view of this and what it's like when you look at this in the north of England from Scotland.
Well, I mean, I do genuinely think that you're going to have to look at these decisions again. It is a budget decision that's got to be re-looked over.
And he's done it. He's looked at it and he's made the decision. Seb, what... Behind closed doors, what will they... I mean, they would not have wanted the optics of having to announce this in Manchester when it affects the north of England. So behind closed doors, what will be going on now in terms of their conversations?
I think the crucial thing in Whitehall and the Conservative Party is about what is going to replace HS2, because the Prime Minister has made it clear he's not resigning from the levelling up agenda. He announced just on Sunday a huge package of funding and devolution powers for towns across the country. And so when the announcement comes in the conference hall tomorrow, it will be, we are not pressing ahead with HS2 as planned, but we will be doing X. And the question is, what is X? And we at Onward believe very strongly that connectivity between northern towns is absolutely key to deliver levelling up, because you've got to link better together Manchester, Liverpool and Leeds. And, obviously, if you look at where we've got to with HS2, there is a question of, would you have started it if this is where we're going to end up? But we now know that it is not going ahead. So if it is going to be cancelled in the ways that have been reported tonight, then the thing I'll be looking for is very much what's replacing it, what kind of projects, and are they going to achieve that aim of bringing the cities close together? Because the point of levelling up is trying to deal with the economic might of London and the South East. And the point of HS3, or Northern Powerhouse Rail, which I imagine we'll be hearing a lot of tomorrow from the Prime Minister, is to try and achieve some of those aims without the complications and the costs and the overruns of HS2.
What else do you want to hear from Rishi Sunak tomorrow? I mean, do you know what Sunakism is?
Well, he's got his 5 key priorities. And
what about a vision?
Well, I think his vision over the last 12 months, I mean, he's been really busy tackling the big issues that we've got in the country, cost of living being one of them. And recently, I was delighted to hear about the £140 million investment for Scottish towns. I think that will be excellent as part of the levelling up agenda.
Do you want to hear a vision? Why do you want 5 more years in power? What are you going to do with it?
Well, I think we are fixing what we need to fix just now in terms
Fixing the problems. Is that your message to voters? Vote Conservative to fix the problems Conservatives cause?
No, I mean, there have been global issues, of course. Cost of living crisis just doesn't impact, the United Kingdom. We've obviously had the war in Ukraine. I think the vision is that we're getting on with the job, and Rishi Sunak has been clear on that. We're certainly getting on with the 5 key priorities that he set out. But I'm actually, really keen to hear what Maurie's got to say, and we'll find that out tomorrow.
What do you think of Suella Braverman's speech today? How did it strike you, Stephen?
I mean, I thought it was a very effective pitch for leader of the opposition, right? Then the message, if you're thinking about it from the perspective of a marginal voter, the message is, woke is out of control, liberalism is running amok, vote Conservative, we've let liberalism run amok, but this time we're really going to tackle it. But what she was doing, I think, very cleverly, is pitching herself, and whenever a party goes into opposition, there's always this tendency which one says, oh, we lost because we weren't sufficiently ourselves. We didn't shout loud enough. And she's doing a very good job of pitching herself very astutely for that slot, but also not appearing to be disloyal or disrupting the conference. And the 2 things party members always want is they want someone who'll be a more authentic version of the party, but who isn't being disruptive. So I think that speech was very, very well judged from that perspective. But I think, as an argument for the country, ultimately, elections are mostly won by the party who appears to be the more moderate, and that was not a speech that appeared at all moderate.
What did you think, Seb Payne?
It reminded me of the importance of storytelling in politics, and I think this goes to what you were saying earlier, Victoria. The fact is that when Mr Sunak stands up tomorrow, we know what the big announcement is going to be, but he's got to tell a compelling story about why the Conservatives should win a 5th historic term, which is something the party has never done throughout its history before. And the reason that Suella Braverman's speech connected with the audience here in Manchester is, whatever people think of the content of it, it was very well done, it knitted together well, and it spoke to what Conservative actors want to hear about how they see things in terms of border control, in terms of border security, in terms of the small boats crisis.
I mean,
and so for Mr Sunak, I think the key thing is to try and take that ambition of saying, here is my vision for the next, not just the next year, but the next year I'm going to deliver things, but then the next 5 years after that, because he's been Prime Minister for about a year now, and that first year was trying to pick up the pieces from Liz Truss and the end of the Boris Johnson era. But I think in Downing Street, Mr Sunak has realised that's not enough. And so tomorrow, you know, the stakes are quite high, and I think he's got to try and hit them.
Yeah. I mean, we always say this about leaders' speeches at these conferences. You know, this is a real test. The stakes are really high. Are they for Rishi Sunak, Stephen?
Well, they're not that high in that whatever happens, Rishi Sunak remains the Conservative Party's best available candidate to lead them into the next election and will do so. But the big risk, if you are the Prime Minister, is that more of the Tory party goes, OK, we've lost this election. This election is about either saving my seat and running my own local campaign, which may be disruptive to the national campaign, or this election is about profiling for the leadership, which again may be disruptive to that national campaign. So I think the thing he needs to do tomorrow is convince the Conservative Party, and I've been thinking a lot about, you know, the 2014 conference where, again, we all, you know, polls suggested that the Conservative Party would lose. David Cameron gave that very good speech, and it unified the party behind him. And I think the Conservative Party faces a much graver and more difficult situation than they did in 2014, but he does need to do something like that, just give the party faithful a tune to sing.
Really, really quickly, Seb, because we're nearly at the end of the programme.
One thing I would just say is there's been a lot of murmurings about leadership challenges at this conference. I don't actually think there is a clear alternative that has emerged, which could have been a difficult situation.
Okay.
And I think for Rishi Sunak, it's just about hitting those aims. And I think actually it does matter tomorrow for the election, not within the party.
Thank you all very much. Thank you very much. Right, let's have a quick look at some of the front pages tomorrow. Well, there's a big photograph of Suella Braverman on the front of the Telegraph. We face migrant hurricane, says Braverman. But the main story is Sunak. I'll change the status quo. Another day of excuses. This is front page of the Daily Mirror. Today, the PM will blame our country's problems on the political system. But remind us, Rishi, how many years have the Tories had to fix Britain? 13. Unlucky for us. The Times. The Beckhams are on the front. I'm not quite sure why. Braverman, migration hurricane is coming. And The Guardian. PM declares politics is broken in a bid to wrest back control. That's all from us tonight. Have a good evening. Thanks for watching.